Hello everyone, this is PKL Entertainment and we are back again, and here now we have another video for you, and we're just going to talk quickly about the fantasy prequel series Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power and House of Dragon, and which one will come out on top as both are due for release around the same time. Now I'm sure we're all familiar with the franchises these prequels are set from. Lord of the Rings, of course, is the revered fantasy novel series from J.R.R. Tolkien, elevated into further landmark cultural status with Peter Jackson's incredible trilogy based off the books, still for me the greatest cinematic trilogy of all time. Amazon series Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power will be set thousands of years before the events of Lord of the Rings, charting the forging of the rings and how Lord Sauron rose to power himself, and this series is due for release on the 2nd of September. House of Dragon, of course, is a prequel to Game of Thrones, the series based on a Song of Ice and Fire fantasy novels by George R.R. Martin, and again brought to cultural relevance with the hugely successful Game of Thrones television series, which ran for 8 seasons from 2011 to 2019. House of Dragon takes place around 200 years before the Game of Thrones series, focusing on the House of Targaryen, and it's overall due for release on August the 21st, 2022. So after much hype and also a lot of scrutiny, which prequel series of these iconic franchises will come out on top and bring about the most success and favour within fans? Now, to be honest, I haven't been as excited for either prequel series. I just don't see much value or significance in both of these stories, which I feel are just trying to cash in on the impact of the previous entries. But if I had to choose one show which I think would probably be the most successful out of the two, I would go for House of Dragon. And that's not necessarily because there's been a lot of massive hype, because I don't think there has, but I just think there's been far less negativity and controversy around House of Dragon. There's been less outrage as the story really isn't going to link that much towards the overall series. I think also that Game of Thrones ended with a final season that was seen as a massive disappointment by many fans, so there really isn't much to be seen to be potentially ruined by a prequel series. I think a lot of fans may have been turned off from Game of Thrones following that final season, so that could affect the show, but I don't think it will take as massive a hit as what Lord of the Rings will. And when we go on to talk about the Rings of Power, it's also been a huge point of contention and debate ever since Amazon acquired the rights for over 200 million. Now this series has had far more scrutiny because of the movie franchises of Jackson's films, which were absolutely huge at the time of their release. Seriously, these movies were like the MCU when they were released way back in 2001, 2002 and 2003, and when we look at Return of the King, that was basically like Avengers Endgame back in 2003. So because of the impact of the movies, fans are far more skeptical, having seen what has happened recently to other massive movie franchises such as Star Wars and Star Trek, where many fans felt the legacy was tainted by identity politics or first diversity and representation. And because of that, the Rings of Power has been getting it from all sides in terms of criticism. Many have felt that the integrated diversity regarding the hobbits and the orcs has been far too much forced. The fact that it seems the story will focus on a warrior like Galadriel in her younger days. Many feel that this is a major push for feminism. All of the interviews from the actors during the show's promotion so far have incited a lot of divisive reactions, the majority of which have been on social media from certain groups, to be fair. But even if we dismiss the ongoing online commentary of this series, I just don't think there's been the same levels of hype as what the movies were when they were released, and that's clearly what Amazon were hoping for when they acquired the rights to this series. But it's a different time now. I'd say back then, like Game of Thrones, the hype has been diminished somewhat after the Hobbit trilogy itself not having the same impact as what Peter Jackson's movies did. Both the trailers themselves haven't been anything truly outstanding, and maybe it's also because we've had so many fantasy entries since the Peter Jackson films, which really broke new ground in bringing back the fantasy genre amongst the mainstream audiences, and since then we've had a whole host of entries within the genre, so there's less aura and excitement following an entry within the fantasy genre. And the Lord of the Rings movies had such a devotion and adulation that many fans were already hating the Amazon series the moment it was announced. I'm just seeing far more negativity surrounding this series than what I've seen with House of Dragon. Now, of course, there isn't any real competition here between the two series. There's no reason why the success of one show can't affect the success of the other. It's just really interesting to have the debate because you have prequels of two famous fantasy franchises coming out at roughly the same time in terms of the episodes. House of Dragon will have probably a 2-week start on the Rings of Power, so eventually there will be a clashing between the two series, and I'm sure many fans and commentators and reviewers will be drawing comparisons between the two and trying to determine which series is doing the better job of representing the iconic franchises. But right now at this stage, I would probably say out of the two that House of Dragon will probably have more success than the Rings of Power, but we will wait and see overall. Sometimes the show can benefit from having lower expectations, and Rings of Power will at the very least have a huge budget behind it, so we're expecting to see lots of spectacle on screen. So those are my overall thoughts and feelings when comparing both House of Dragon and Lord of the Rings of Power, both prequel stories to famous fantasy franchises coming out at roughly the same time, and drawing comparison over which will have the more success. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Which series are you more excited for? Which series do you believe will garner far more favour amongst fans? And which series do you believe will cause more outrage and negativity when it's overall released? And of course, when both series arrive on screen, I will provide premiere reviews, finale reviews, and also season reviews. So of course, up and coming, we've got House of Dragon, which is due to debut this Sunday on August the 21st, and then shortly after that, Rings of Power will come later on September the 2nd. So look out for coverage for both series on this channel within the future. And if you have any other series or shows or movies that you'd like to see me review within the channel, then let me know in the comments, and I will see if I can provide far more commentary for you on those topics within the future. Please also hit and like the subscription and notification buttons so I can provide you with more high quality content like this in the future. But that's it for now. Take care of yourselves, stay safe distances, and I will see you very, very soon.